Happy Wednesday. I'm excited to share a special live with you today. Wakenda is going to be joining me today. She is a client of mine, a Dharma Mentorship client, and we're going to be talking about her process, her evolution of growing into her self-trust and strengthening her confidence in her gifts and her own wisdom. She has developed this expression of relationship work, and there she is. I'm going to ask her to join us. Hi, Wakenda. Let's get you if you can join. Yay! So I was just sharing, Wakenda, are you here with us? Yay, Wakenda! We
We
did
did
it.
it.
We figured it out. Welcome today. I was just giving a little introduction about you and your journey of growing in self-trust and confidence in your medicine and strengthening this gift you have with relationship work. So let's start with that. How did all of this begin, this process of going through your own initiation process around relationships, and what did that teach you?
Yeah, well, that's a huge question that has a a whole book on it. But well, I'll give it to you in the nutshell. Um, yeah, I had been in the healing arts my entire life since itty bitty, and the biggest catalyst, though, where I moved from just being a hands-on healer into this work was
Mm,
the catalyst, like so many people have, which is a huge ending, a huge, for me, it was a trauma.
mm,
It was a divorce. I think probably almost going on 6 years ago now, that sent me into this tremendous, deep, dark night of the soul.
mm,
And it was, yeah, the most challenging and most painful time um, to experience that, because there was a lot of challenge with that desire. I didn't even at that point in my life have a deep trust in the experience and what was happening. Um, and however, I think, let's see, I was 40, and and I was really ready to see and take and learn everything that I could from that experience to really call in something truly aligned and something truly beautiful. And that wasn't necessarily something that I had known. It wasn't what was modeled for me. It wasn't exemplified in most of my world. So I really didn't have a very deep,
mm,
clear understanding of what healthy relationships were. Um, Ultimately, I kind of just, I think I, in a lot of ways, just chose it random. And so this was an
mm,
opportunity for me to really
mm,
dive deep and ask for something different, and
mm,
really discover the and do the deep inner work um, to learn what I didn't know, to essentially to what I think I
mm,
was probably ignorant to, but also had like a really deep understanding and belief that something more existed. There was that
mm,
little hopeful, romantic girl in me that, just knew that a relationship could be so much more than I had experienced and what had been modeled around me, what I had seen. And so I figured, well, I can't, get any worse from here. So why don't we go find out and see what this journey can teach me, and see how that can move me along in this life.
mm. So you started as a body worker,
Mm-hmm.
and you went through a major divorce that ended up being what I would call an initiation process, where as a healer, your path, your purpose, your sense of why am I here? What's the point? Was tested.
Mm-hmm.
You call it the dark night of the soul. Many people use that terminology. I've come to realize that this is um, a necessary initiation process that every healer must go through. Most of us go through more than one, and then we'll continue to go through many initiations along the way. That's the nature of being a healer. So if you don't want to do that, don't sign up to be a healer,
Yeah.
because there's going to be some dark nights of the soul.
Yes.
And
It's not
so
for the
the
faint of heart.
relationship falling apart, no, it's not for the faint of heart. And there's a reason for that, and we'll circle back to it. But this falling apart of the relationship, going through a divorce, it was the catalyst for something more, a deeper why. And so walk us through that. You started asking questions. You started digging deeper. You wanted more. So where did that lead you?
Well, it led me in so many places, both externally and internally. But from an external perspective, I set off like every other, I think, midlife crisis, a woman in a midlife crisis, and was like, all right, I'm going to jet set across the world. And in fact, I didn't actually really know where I was going. Some days I actually had no idea where my plane was taking me next. And I just would question, all right, where do I go next? And something would show up. So, at the time, externally in the worldly way, it took me to a lot of sacred sites around the world. But I had a real deep intention, though, of it was like my own pilgrimage, essentially. And I just invited in, whatever I could to support this healing process and take me where I need to go. And so it came in forms that I didn't even necessarily know, why or where. I ended up in temples across the world. I wasn't fully sure why I was there. And then, some, very synchronistic, something would happen and lead me to a next place. And so I dove deep into tantric studies at the time. That was really where my heart was motivated to. Actually didn't know what tantra was at the time. I was actually just having this vision of really living and embodying this very, what I had believed it to be, this very connected heart, spiritual and sexual practice. And I learned it was so much more, and still have a very, remedial knowledge of the many different lineages and forms. But it connected me to this belief that what I truly felt inside actually did exist, that relationships could be spiritual, sexual, and so heartfelt at the same time. And it could have all of that. And so I just continued those studies with working with another therapist and working, just taking all kinds of classes I could in sacred sexuality, and more tantra, and then just reading upon books about relationships. And really, at the time, not really knowing that was what I was doing, was cultivating this. Essentially what happened was really cultivating my relationship to my inner beloved. And so there came a point that external work became my internal work, which is now my work, my embodied work of really embodying that deep love with the inner beloved, and resting in that place that became a center of peace for me that didn't necessarily exist before, where I've been looking outwardly for something like that other half, right? That in a male partner, that everything I didn't have, I needed to feel complete. And so through that journey, through that 5-year journey, and through all the different practices I embodied, it became really clear that was always within me, that lived. But I had to meet that within me, and I had to meet that which kept me from that, even more important.
And so what was that part of you? What did you find in that exploration of, this is what's disconnecting me from my beloved, my own inner love? What was in the way of that? And obviously only share what feels safe
Yeah.
or helpful to share for others.
Thank you. I will. Well, you know me, I'm a rather open book, so I have to not share so much. Uh, no, you know, what I find is it was all pretty basic stuff that we all suffer with, that I find every person I work with suffers, which is, you know, the part that we're unwilling to look at, the part that hasn't been
Mm,
accepted, the parts that we feel shameful about, the deep inner criticism, the deep lack of
mhm,
self-worth, self-worth, self-love, that I didn't really fully understand what that meant until I recognized that it lived there. And
mm,
this, and I think the parts that I had been programmed and designed to keep in the shadow, keep hidden, you know,
mm,
just show up as one way. And so then I deeply criticized this very key part of not necessarily who I am, but what I was experiencing and what we're all experiencing.
mm,
And so meeting this part
mm,
of myself that I was scared to look at, and let her
mm,
come to the surface and give her a voice, give her expression, give her an opportunity to be heard. That wasn't something that I had ever been, I think our culture hadn't ever been conditioned to believe was okay. So it was deeply
mm,
hidden in those shadows, hidden from myself.
mm. So the shadows were revealed,
Mm-hmm.
and you had the courage and the willingness to go there. And that radically shifted your path, your offerings, the way you work as a healer. Instead of a hands on healer, you started to develop this awareness that actually I know a few things about relationships and what it means to be in relationship with self and other. And that's what's been strengthening over the last few years. When we started Dharma Mentorship, and we've actually worked together twice, a few years ago, this was stirring.
Mm-hmm.
This was starting to bubble to the surface. Wait a second, there's more here. And then over this last year, there's been a readiness. Now's the time. I know it's time now.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's changed for you? How did you get to this point of from hands-on healer to become confident and trusting in this medicine around relationships?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, it's a combination of things. I still love hands-on healing, by the way, and still feel like it's such a part of that gift. But I actually worked as an intuitive and clairvoyant for many years, but like behind the scenes, and it wasn't something I discussed or brought up, and worked with very few people. Mostly gave it away, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, the I hadn't believed that that was, I think, for one, of value, but then yeah, I think essentially just, yeah, it wasn't something of value. And so then I closed my voice in order to put it through my hands. And so a big part of the shift is, one, I was already moving that direction when we first started working together. But I was still very much of a hands-on healer at the time. And to be probably really honest, I think COVID really pushed me into that, up leveling
Mm-hmm.
even more. And even then
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't entirely ready for it. um, but I think from a collective level we were pushed to do things
Mm-hmm.
differently, and yeah, for me to disconnect from that part of myself that I had put a lot of worth on, of being able to physically touch somebody, and to really have it.
What felt like it was missing though from the hands-on healing? You've touched on a few gems, but when we first started working together before this year, um, there was something that was missing for you
Mhm.
doing hands-on healing.
Yeah, that was the voice, the expression through voice. That it was
Mm-hmm.
coming through hands, but I wasn't really trusting the wisdom coming through voice. And so that was
Mm-hmm.
the part I
Mm-hmm.
was disconnected with that has really, yeah, been continuing to evolve and to express and to come out in that way. Mm-hmm.
So this is something I want to highlight because when we're talking about Dharma, this is about the wholeness of who you are and honoring the wholeness of your gifts. So it's not that you weren't on your dharmic path, right? Hands-on healing and being a healer, it's part of your gift and it's part of your dharmic path and offering. But it was the severing and the disconnection from that wholeness, being visible, being heard, having knowledge and wisdom shared. You're Jupiter, you're guru, you are actually a teacher and a
Mm-hmm.
guide. And so even though you were able to do some teaching through the hands, it wasn't allowing you to express the wholeness of your gifts and wisdom. And that's what started to blossom now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what's shifted for you over the last year? We started Dharma Mentorship work. Um, it's been 9 months, something like
Mm-hmm.
that, this time.
Mm-hmm.
And something shifted for you this year. There's been a radical
Mm-hmm.
shift, in fact, in terms of your confidence, but also your self-trust and your commitment or your devotion to your path, your offerings, your visibility. And that changed everything for you. So tell us what happened. What allowed you to suddenly be, and I know it's not sudden because it's a process, but something happened this year for you in that commitment and that readiness. What was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there was another level of initiation that wasn't as
Mm,
intense, not
mm,
as deep, dark night of the soul. But I specifically remember a couple of journeys that I embarked on where it was as if I had left an old part of myself and moved and stepped
mm,
into a new expression of myself, like a matured and up
mm,
leveled. It was like letting the final pieces of the young maiden go, essentially, the young
mm,
girl go. And it felt like one, the word devotion, like you said, it's become a devotion for me.
mm,
It's become a very there's been a clarity that wasn't there before, where I had distrusted, where I had doubted,
mm,
my purpose in the world. I mean, I had an inkling and I felt like I was living it, but not fully aligned. There was too much doubt. There was still, and how I know that there was doubt is because I was always looking for something else. Like I was, trying to
mm,
find something to distract me from this
mm,
path. And that's how the doubt showed up. And there
mm,
became, there was a process where that doubt started to move away, and it became a clear path through the Jodish work and other work that this is what I'm here to do. It's
mm,
absolutely non-negotiable. It's not a question anymore, where I used to question, am I really a guide? Am I a teacher? I mean, I do teach, I do all these things, but there was just too much uncertainty. That uncertainty
mhm,
took a huge step back, and I moved into that next level of clear knowing, clear,
mhm,
without a shadow of a doubt, now knowing what it is that I'm here to do on this planet, and also the bigger purpose of that. And that feels it felt like there became an alignment when this work didn't, it wasn't about me. Clearly I went through an
mm,
initiation to experience something and to embody something, to be able to share. But why is the importance of sharing? Well, the importance of sharing is because I believe that when we embody this work and we do this really challenging work and we see ourselves as sacred, loving, kind, compassionate human beings, then that's the healing for the planet. When we see ourselves as that, we see every person on this planet that way. have more
Mm,
kindness, we have more compassion, we have more love. We see them as sacred. When we see them as sacred, then we see the earth as sacred. We see the planet as sacred. We see all of life as sacred. And so if we don't live that within ourselves, if we don't unionize with that sacred beloved, then we continue to perpetrate out into the world. And so to
mm,
me, this work is
mhm,
so much bigger than, being able to be in a happy, good relationship. Like, great, that's awesome. But no, it's so much more.
mm. So I hear that's what strengthened for you
Mhm.
in this process. And it's through our work together, but also all of the pieces you've been cultivating. One of the biggest shifts for you has been this gift of attracting your own partner, your own love relationship that I imagine has been one of the biggest gurus or teachers for you on this path. And so, how has that maybe informed or shaped the strengthening of your confidence and the way that you're seeing the wisdom of relationships, the power of relationships, actually?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part of that, calling in this desired relationship, um, I think just deepened that trust and that certainty
Mm,
of what is possible in this world.
mm-hmm, mm,
And just
mm,
that being a reflection so brightly of mirroring, when you really decide to own it, to cultivate it, to
mm,
embody it, that there's no other possible way but for it to be met. And so it
mm,
feels like this big trust in not just life, but because I've always had, I think, this sense of like, I trust in life. But I feel like what's happened within our work together is it became, yes, trusting in life as a co-creator to that. And in order to be the co-creator, then that's the practice of building self-trust. And so trusting that
mm-hmm,
everything that is happening in life, wherever you're at in life, if you are consciously co-creating with it, then it is all, there is nothing for me to question. It's happened.
mm,
So my partnership really feels like that's helped strengthen that for me as well, to be that
mm,
reflective mirror. Um, who's just an amazing person in his own right, but always reflecting back just that trust, that certainty, that deep devotion, that deep purpose
mm,
in life. Yeah.
mm. So the self-trust piece has been both inner and mirrored from the outer, which has strengthened the trust, the overall trust in the path. And I think this is a really beautiful reminder that um, that we meet what arrives on the path with curiosity. That this is showing up as an opportunity to create something,
Mm-hmm.
to transform something, to learn something, to grow in a new way. And that if we're willing to meet these challenges, these obstacles, the grief, the darkness, the pain, the suffering, the joy, the pleasure, the creativity, the abundance, with curiosity, with willingness, that's the path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the dharmic path.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've loved about walking with you, Wakenda, is witnessing this development. I don't always get the opportunity to track clients for years and years, but you're one of the clients that I've been able to see develop over multiple years. And to come to this place of confidence and knowing with certainty, these are my gifts, this is my offering, and I understand my role in the ripple effect, that I am part of this process of sharing my medicine in my way and helping some people on this planet experience and discover these gifts as well, these opportunities, a relationship with love in a different way. And that is so fulfilling for me to know that, these aren't my gifts. This isn't my medicine. And to see you expand and grow in such a unique expression of yourself and your soul. It's so fulfilling and satisfying. And nothing gives me more joy than seeing my clients have unwavering confidence and self-trust. That's the biggest gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I've witnessed that in you. And even just hearing that this is non-negotiable. I often say there's no plan B with Dharma. And many of us have had this experience where the doors just keep closing behind us and there's one way forward and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to keep walking.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of devotion and maybe turning the suffering into devotion, a devotional practice. That I'm devoted to whatever's arriving.
Yeah.
And in your case, you met the darkness, which I believe is what it takes. And it actually transformed into love. First, love for the self. And now it's blossomed into attracting a devotional love with a partner. And that's incredible. I mean, that's an incredible story. So I'm celebrating you in the growth and the transformation and the joy and the willingness to keep doing the grief work that supports space for the nourishment, both in self and in your partnership and in your offerings. So what would you encourage someone else to do who's going through that initiation process or unclear in their offerings and their gifts? They haven't fully committed or devoted yet. What would you say to someone?
Well, first and foremost, I couldn't have done it alone. And I know that. Particularly, I don't know if it's for everyone, but I feel like myself being a woman, that other women and community are important for me. And so I see all of the support that I have had over these last 5 years. And so I feel like that's first and foremost, is that we're not meant to do this alone. And especially...
So gather your team.
Yes, gather your team.
Gather your team.
Yes, because for me, there's been a process that was very aware of, where I didn't have the belief system yet, and I needed to ride on the wings of somebody else's belief system until it became my own. And so that for me has taken a while. It's, and actually it's not over. I mean, I feel like now I feel really clear that always having a team is important. And reaching out for different things at different steps of the way and different evolutions of that. Yeah. So that would be first and foremost, because I think it's hard to do this entirely alone.
100%.
Yeah. And then, the other piece of it is bringing in that curiosity and that willingness. And moreover, I think the other piece for me that was the practice was beginning to notice like who was driving my ship, and starting to become more of the witness around who was playing that, who was driving the ship. It was oftentimes not the very nice person at the head of the wheel. And I began to actively and consciously decide who got to drive this being. And that was a practice, one that's been one of probably the biggest discipline that I've done, where at one point I used to identify so heavily with whatever one was driving the ship that wasn't usually very kind. And then, that story or that voice still shows up, but I consciously like a disciplinarian, decide who gets to actually be in charge of this body and this being. And so I feel like that's the other part of this practice around that dharmic purpose, is when you're
Mm-hmm.
confused and don't have clarity of beginning to shift what voice you want to listen to, because there was that other voice, the inkling, that voice that says, I think you are here for more. I think you have a bigger offering. I think there's something more that you can share in the world. And to consciously choose to listen to that voice more often and
Mm-hmm.
recognize the other voice as just what it was, that it didn't have to drive the ship, and to be able
Mm-hmm.
to put it in its place. There's several voices out
Mm-hmm.
there.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So there's a solid discernment
Mm-hmm.
and conscious self-tracking
Mm-hmm.
of what do I want my truth to be, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so that inner work and also gathering the team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything else that feels important or has felt
I feel like
important?
there's another third piece of that equation, which was also, um, gathering the team and being willing to let go of the participants that didn't support that. People and players in life that
Yeah.
it it was
Mm-hmm.
distracting, hindering, that where we kind of I had to
Mm-hmm.
get a little tunnel vision. And fortunately, I think in my life I didn't have to do a lot. Just it naturally, I made the intention, and
Mm-hmm.
people, circumstances naturally fell away. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, more people came in to support and that next level of desire. So another piece of that discernment as well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
100%. And it would make sense because your work is
Mm-hmm.
relationships. So discerning relationships has it's part of the
Yep.
journey. And that is cultivating the path as well.
Mm-hmm.
And who's driving the ship?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are so influenced by our environment, our relationships, and the collective as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dharma actually requires quite a bit of discernment and focus and devotion
Mm-hmm.
in order to stay one pointed,
Mm-hmm.
right action.
Mm-hmm.
So you've cultivated this over the years and it's serving you well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been huge shifts, growth, confidence, self-trust. The offerings have strengthened, refined, they're blossoming. New amazing clients are showing up. You've changed your pricing. You're activating retreats through sacred space. Um, there's just an incredible amount of growth that's occurring for you as a result of this focus and dedication. And I really want to inspire others to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this in class the other day, but you will not succeed not fully committing. Yeah, it's a dab. I'm kind of maybe next year I'll do a little. Right now, maybe next year I'll be committed. You will not succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like the
And I think you're an example of that, Wakenda.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the other part that I want to say about that, which has been a constant learning for me as well, is some of this like deep conditioning around what I thought success meant and looked like, and how I
Mm-hmm.
show up in the form of commitment. And that for me, the reminder is always, always, always that it has to be in the form of fun and play and creativity. And that's part of what kept
Mm-hmm.
me from it for so long, is that I thought I had to
Mm.
work hard and push myself, and so then I never would, because it's not even who I am. So when even gets going, and when I
It wasn't
yeah,
attractive.
I'm like, oh, that's not gonna happen. But once I began to really deeply move into how I work as a creative feminine being, that play is the other non-negotiable for me. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm reminded of this frequently as I get a little slapped across the face when I get too serious. And so that commitment to me, comes through the action steps of fun and play, and not that old way of being committed to something, that shows up like in the way of, and I even say this is medicine for relationship, that, when we get too serious about relationship and we think we have to work so hard on it and it's got to be so efforted and we always have to try, like it's, who wants that? No. And so the medicine from my desire for relationship to be fun and playful and gentle and sweet, and approach all challenges with that, is my same practice for business. A little bit harder for me because I'm actually more conditioned in the business world to think a different way. And so I'm always reminded about how when I show up in this way, that same principle has to come with me. That's what will provide success for me. And that's when I feel like I'm not working. And for me, this work isn't work because it's fun and it's lively and it's creative and it's inspiring. And so as soon as I make it, then I have to go find something.
And so this is another reminder of Dharma, is the joy, the pleasure. It's one of the pathways of Dharma, Kama. So having the nourishment, the soul nourishment, the play, the joy, it's both relevant to relationship with self, the dharmic path, and the dharmic offering. And that's part of your teaching and what you remind your clients of. So tell us, how can people connect with you, and what are the offerings right now? How can people work with you, Wakenda, in this relationship medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find me in a variety of ways. Wakenda Rose on Instagram and Facebook.
We'll link to you.
Linked all the things. My website where you can, get a little bit more in depth if you'd like. I also have a podcast out that I started this last year, a fun, playful way to just be able to share a variety of things. Currently, I work one-on-one with people, and I have a couple of different offerings of how that will look. And then 2023, there's going to be a lot of different growth in terms of a little bit more group work, a self-love mastery class that's coming out. So look forward to those details. They're not solidified yet. And then my partner and I are hosting retreats here on the shared land that we live on here in New Mexico. We're on a 500-acre ranch. And so we're bringing different retreats for couples and women-led retreats as well.
Beautiful. Oh, it's so exciting. So be sure to follow Wakenda and sign up for her newsletter so you can get all of those details. And there's one-on-one, there's group work, there's in-person, and all kinds of wonderful wisdom in the podcast. And I can't wait to see what develops over the coming months and cycles, Wakenda. I'm celebrating you and your clear, focused vision and path. It's been such a joy to work with you and see you blossom in this confidence, but also this devotion to your own gifts and medicine. And if those of you who are watching are interested in Dharma Mentorship, you can reach out to me and I'll be happy to have a chat with you to see what you need and what would support you moving forward in this clarity, devotion, and focus for your path, your business, and your soul offerings. Wakenda, thank you for joining me live and for sharing your work with those watching. Is there anything you want to share as we close, as we sign off?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you a big thanks and gratitude for being my mentor and guide over these last few years. And I definitely don't think I would be at the place where I am at now without that support and really helping me, to integrate everything that was showing up for me in my life in a deeply embodied, trusting way. So thank you for walking with me on this journey and being that.
My pleasure. It's been such a joy. I really appreciate you and all of the wisdom that you're here to share. And it's a true joy to walk with you. So thank you for sharing today. I'll see you in class and in
Yes.
session. And goodbye to everyone. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.